Alrighty, so we are taking a look at Tesla stock. Now, this video is going to be rather short as I just want to go ahead and talk about what's currently going on with Tesla stock and also discuss some of the market events that are going to be unfolding in the coming week that pertain to the overall market, but as well as Tesla stock. So we'll go ahead and talk about a couple of things. I want to provide some reminders, but before we start, I want to share this tweet that I found rather amusing that I believe you guys are going to find amusing as well. So let's go ahead and share this. So we have Jesse Cohen who tweeted, and this is of course a satirical tweet saying, according to my technical analysis, the market can either move higher, push lower, or trade sideways in the week ahead. Happy trading, right? And he shows this chart with a bunch of lines over here, just pretty much overcrowding the charts. And this is rather funny as often I say you want to stay away from individuals who have this one-dimensional approach for the markets and they're only looking at technical analysis, especially when the ones who have a bunch of lines on the chart, as I often say that, that's a very myopic way to look into the markets, right? And also stocks don't have to adhere to whatever squiggly line you draw on the chart, right? So this was a funny tweet. I just wanted to share that with you guys. As I often say, you want to have a prudent approach to the market and look at several different things, right? So thought that was funny, but let's go ahead and talk about some things. So what is it that we want to see with Tesla? Well, let's go ahead and discuss what we've currently seen with Tesla, right? Now, if you're not subscribed to the channel, consider subscribing. But for a while now, for a couple of weeks, I've been saying, hey, I'm bearish on Tesla in the short term, right? I'm bullish on Tesla in the long term. But in the short term, I said, and this was on the 19th after Tesla's earnings, I've said we're probably going to see some capitulation with Tesla for a number of reasons, right? And I listed the reasoning, right? Now, as Tesla was falling down, I saw several tweets on Twitter or X.com rather, right? And also individuals on YouTube who said, man, Tesla's selling off so much, it can't sell off anymore, it has to bounce up, right? And this is a very childlike approach, right? You can't just say, oh, well, the market's selling off, my RSI indicator is telling me it's oversold, so it has to bounce. No, right? Because where were those individuals when Tesla and the overall market was moving upwards? No one said, oh, well, the market's moving, it's so high up, it has to correct, right? And so there's underlying reasons why, a stock or the market can move upwards and downwards, right? There's several different variables that you want to pay attention to. So what are some things that we want to talk about? Well, from a technical approach, I did say that, Tesla stock did have this volume pocket right over here where when you look at the volume profile, we see that volume relative to price, there's this gap over here. And that's where if we see selling pressure, we're going to see capitulation and selling for Tesla, right? And that's exactly what we saw. Now we're at this 215 level that I've stated for a while now, where it's been somewhat of a resistance, and it's also been somewhat of a support in the past, right? Now, that's just a technical approach. But what else do we like to look at? Well, let's go ahead and share this, right? So let's look at the 10-year Treasury note. Now, this is something I've been saying for quite a while now. I know some individuals think it's kind of foolish to, have this up, but I think it's imperative that, especially if you're scalping, to have the 10-year Treasury note up and seeing how it's doing, because one of the things I've stated in the past is that if Treasury yields, right, if the 10-year is high, well, that makes selling pressure much more apparent for the overall market. Why? Well, investors, right, they're going to want to take away their capital in risky assets like the stock market, right, or equities, and go ahead and pour that into safe havens, which are treasuries. Now, of course, treasuries are the safest investment you can make, right? Now, of course, in a perfect world, a country could get blown up and they can't pay you back. But generally speaking, right, I think I said that backwards. In a non-perfect world, that could happen. But generally speaking, in a perfect world, right, when you purchase treasuries, you're guaranteed a return. So as treasuries move upwards, well, that means that why would I have my money in the stock market when things are not looking that great, when yields are going up, and I know I could guarantee get this return, right? Well, what did we see on the 18th? Well, we actually saw a compression on the 18th, where we saw treasury yields start dipping downwards. And I told the Push and Profit private group that this is something you want to pay attention to because this could provide somewhat of some relief for the overall markets. Now, let's go ahead and zoom in on Tesla for the 18th. And yeah, we did see that it moved sideways, it consolidated. But overall, if you actually zoom in, we did actually close up slightly higher than what we opened at, right? Now, this makes sense, right? Because obviously the markets did have some relief. It wasn't just continuously selling off. But at the same time, we saw Tesla consolidate, as this was a major area that I've highlighted in the past, right? Especially when we zoom out and we talk about that 215 area that I talked about. But what else is happening this week that could have a severe influence on the overall markets? So coming up this week, we have the Jackson Hole Annual Symposium. So what is this exactly, right? Well, this is pretty interesting because this happens every year, and basically, this is a gathering of central bankers, finance ministers, global economists, and so they all gather together, right, in this little annual summit. And why this is important for the markets is because we're going to hear Fed Chairman Jerome Powell speak and provide some more commentary as regards as what's coming from the Federal Reserve. Now, what did we recently get from the Federal Reserve? Well, recently we had the Fed minutes, right? And what did we see in the Fed minutes? Well, we saw that there was a lot of bifurcation where we saw this sort of dissent from a lot of the members, right? There was a divide, to basically put it, right? Where we had some members saying, hey, we may have to keep rates higher for longer, and some saying we may have to cut as soon as 2024 in January, right? And so this is interesting because now we're going to have is Jerome Powell speak, and he could provide some dovish commentary that can provide somewhat of a relief for the overall markets. And of course, that's going to bleed into Tesla, right? The overall market can see some relief if we have Fed Chairman Jerome Powell kind of provide some dovish comments. And so that's something that we absolutely want to go ahead and take a look at. But what else do we have coming up this week? Well, of course, we're at a major level with Tesla. We have we have Jerome Powell from the Federal Reserve, right, going to provide some commentary. But we also have earnings, right? So I want to go ahead and share what we have for earnings. So for this week, we have a few companies like Zoom. And I know every time I talk about earnings for other companies, individuals look at me crazy, like, well, you're talking about Tesla, but you're talking about, Apple or whatever, right? And it's because we want to see what the sentiment for the overall market is. And so one of the notable earnings that I've sent out, an email to individuals who are subscribed to the free weekly newsletter that I do every single Sunday, is I talked about Nvidia, right? Now, why is Nvidia such a big, important influence for overall markets? Well, let me share this little meme that I found, and then I'll go ahead and explain it. So basically, let's go ahead and share this real quick. I don't know why the keyboard is not working. We'll have to manually do this. So we have this meme right here where it says, QQQ, is there still a bull market, right? And then we had Nvidia saying, you're talking to me, right? So we have a lot of dependency for the overall sentiment for the market on Nvidia. Why is that? Well, one of the things we want to pay attention to is Nvidia is a huge player in the AI space, right? We've had a lot of companies, including Tesla, benefit tremendously from the buzzword of AI in the last few months, right? And so one of the things we want to see with Nvidia is we obviously want to see Nvidia have a good earnings, and we want to hear some good forward guidance on them, right? Because Nvidia, if you don't know, they have 80% of the market for when it comes to GPUs. Now, I went ahead and I broke down the difference between GPUs and CPUs in that email, that free weekly email I sent out. Of course, if you're not in that weekly newsletter, you missed out, but you're always free to click the links in the description below and sign up for that free weekly newsletter. This way you don't miss out on next week, right, where we go ahead and cover a few things. But, just to recap, Nvidia is a huge player when it comes to the AI space. And we've heard, if you listen to a lot of the earnings call, we've heard Elon talk about AI. We've heard, I believe recently, I can't think of the name. There was, I don't know if it was Amazon or I can't even remember. So many companies had already had their earnings, but a lot of these companies, if you want to look at their earnings report and you hit Control F and typed in AI, you'll see that this quarter alone, AI has been mentioned way more than last quarter. And so we're seeing a lot of companies focus on AI, right? And so that means that most likely they're going to be spending capital to invest on AI, which would go to Nvidia. And now if Nvidia performs and has a great earnings and good forward guidance, this could shift the sentiment for the overall markets. We've seen the NASDAQ, right? When I say the QQQs, right, that's pretty much the NASDAQ index ETF. I always just refer to it as a NASDAQ, or you could just say the Qs, whatever. We've seen, pretty much a lot of these tech-heavy indexes pretty much sell off, right? But we see that, we have this little bit of a wick over here. This some individuals call it a tail or a shadow, whatever you want to call it. But it seems like we kind of bounced up a bit. Let's go ahead and look at a daily view, right? We had the green candle, right? And then shifting back to a weekly view. So this is an important week because, again, we may have some dovish commentary from the Federal Reserve, from Jerome Powell. We also have earnings from some major companies like Nvidia, which could shape the sentiment. And then, just going back on Tesla, from a technical approach, we want to see what happens around this level, around the 215 area, right? Because of course, we want to see, well, if Tesla is going to continue breaking down, well, that's not good, right? Then of course that means that there's probably going to be some more selling pressure. But if we start seeing that, and this is something I've said, that I believe Tesla's going to sell off, and around that 215 area, we're going to consolidate. And then from there, we want to see, well, isn't Tesla going to bounce upwards? And if it's going to bounce, or I'm sorry, break below, right? Now, if it bounces upwards for my long-term portfolio where I do have exposure to Tesla, my goal is to, go ahead and add more into my long-term position. Again, you have to be reminded, if you're a long-term investor, you have to be patient. You can't get, worried when, Tesla's selling off tremendously. I mean, there's this quote from Warren Buffett, and it says, be fearful when everyone's greedy. So when Tesla's moving upwards, you should be fearful, but be greedy when everyone's fearful. So we've seen Tesla sell off a huge amount in the last few weeks. And if we start to see that confirmation of a bounce from here, well, that's where you're most likely going to want to be greedy. Now, again, you should always do whatever you find value in. You shouldn't just copy or do whatever I say. One of the things I always say is that you got to do your own due diligence, right? You can't just trade or make an investment based on whatever I say, whatever a fund manager like Kathy Wood or Gary Black says. Again, you have to do whatever you see value in for your personal situation. But for me, I see that if Tesla starts bouncing up from here, that's a good area where I want to go ahead and buy in, because again, I am bullish on Tesla in the long term. I was just bearish in the short term for, various reasons that I've said in previous videos. Now, if Tesla does continue selling off, well, I'm most likely going to continue being bearish. But again, one of the things I've said to the Push and Profit private group in the beginning of the year is that we're most likely going to have a 2.5 year where we're going to have a lot of optimism. And we saw that. Now, let's not only look at Tesla, let's look at the QQQs, where we saw pretty much from January, the first week of this year, we've had so much of a rally. But I said going into the second quarter, well, that's going to be an issue, right? And this is where we're seeing some turbulence in the market. Why is that? Well, there's two concerns. There's either the concern of a recession or an earnings recession, right? Now, we can't have a recession unless job or the labor market weakens. And we haven't seen that. I mean, in the previous video, I broke down Walmart's, we talked a little bit about Walmart. I discussed that with the Push and Profit private group. And I know, again, people are talking about, hey, you're talking about Tesla, but then you're bringing up Walmart. Well, Walmart is a huge employer, and we want to see how they're doing. Walmart did good. And so what we're seeing is that, a lot of these companies are holding on to their employees, right? And that's good, right? We're just seeing hours slightly be cut for some companies, or for some employees, but relatively speaking, a lot of the companies are still hoarding employment. And that could be for several reasons. I mean, during the pandemic, it was difficult for a lot of these companies to even attain talent and hold on to people, right? So they may be worried about that. And that's good. We want a strong, robust labor market, because that means we can't have a recession. You can't have a true recession if everyone's working, right? It's when people are not working where they don't have capital, right? Because what does it mean when they don't have capital? Well, they don't have a job. They don't have income coming in, right? They don't have a paycheck coming in the mail or direct deposit, whatever. Well, they can't buy Teslas, or they can't buy, whatever company corporate earnings it relates to, right? And so then we start to see capitulation in selling, but we can't have that if people aren't employed, right? And so I just want to emphasize that. But what else can we have? We have an earnings recession where people are employed, but people are so stressed with their pockets, right? Where individuals are not spending on a lot of these products. It could be Teslas, it could be luxury goods. I mean, it could be any type of market. And so that could obviously compress earnings. And so that's one of the things that I've said. We want to pay attention to how we navigate into the second quarter. And that's why I put a huge emphasis on NVIDIA, right? Because I think NVIDIA has the potential to do well, just because we have so many other companies that are pouring money, that may be pouring money, especially if they're talking about AI a lot. Well, they may be pouring money into NVIDIA. And so if we see NVIDIA do well, that continues our conversation that AI is not just a little fad, but actually a strong trend that's going to be here. And so that could, keep the markets upward, right? Because, what has been dying recently, if we go back to the QQQs, is the idea of, AI, right? We've seen, you're talking about AI for a lot of these companies, but where are the earnings, right? And so we want to see that AI is going to stay a strong trend. And let's go ahead and talk about Tesla. So let's see. So another thing that I also want to mention, let's go ahead and actually highlight something here. Now, even if we have a little bit of a bounce over here with Tesla, I don't expect this to be the moment where we see Tesla break upwards to all-time highs again. I don't think that's going to happen that quickly, right? I think it's going to be a slow recovery. We're going to see a little bit of a bounce, but then I think we're going to consolidate for a bit. Of course, you can't just, trade or invest all your money based on that, me saying that, but we're going to want to watch to see what ends up happening with Tesla in that regard. But with that said, I don't have any more memes or any other topics to really share with you guys for today's video. It's a really quick video for this Sunday. Hopefully you guys enjoyed some of the conversation, some of the topics in here. And with that said, I'll see you guys on this next video right over here. Take care, guys.